Joining me now from Washington, D.C., as he does every week with Rita on a Wednesday, is Adam Creighton from The Australian. Adam, how are you? Thanks for joining me tonight. The situation in the Ukraine seriously ramping up. The US President Joe Biden and his Western allies, including Australia, have imposed a number of sanctions. Is it a test for Biden, or are we just expecting him to pay lip service to this situation, which, let's face it, is coming as a surprise to precisely nobody?
Well, look, I think it is a test for Biden in the sense that the US and especially the president now for many months has made a very big song and dance about this, and you could say fairly enough. So they've certainly said that they were going to try to stop Russia from invading Ukraine, and in the first instance that has failed. It remains to be seen whether these sanctions and the prospect of more of them stop Vladimir Putin from going any further. I mean, the sanctions so far, despite the rhetoric, I would say are fairly soft. I mean, you've seen just today stock markets in Europe, I think, are up about 1%. And yesterday, when the president here was speaking about the sanctions, markets were down about 2%, but by the time he finished talking, they were only down 1%. So I think there's a sense of relief amongst investors and financial markets that these are not particularly tough. And they're probably not going to affect Russia very much either. I mean, there's an economy there that for 7 years has been steadily insulating itself from the rest of the world, in full knowledge that sanctions like this would be coming in the future. So things like, for instance, stopping the Russian government from borrowing overseas. Well, it doesn't really need to borrow overseas. It has a budget surplus,
right,
and its debt levels are very, very low.
So it's very much a case of it being bunkered down and prepared to ride it out, from the sound of it.
Yeah, look, I think that's right. I mean, the only person that knows the next step here is Vladimir Putin, obviously, and it's unclear at this stage how far he's going to go. Certainly the US thinks that there's going to be a full-scale invasion, but there are other experts who say that that's not going to happen because of the enormous loss of life that would happen, and that in this instance what Russia wants to do is just kind of gradually and very slowly over a number of years increase its level of influence in the Ukraine. And I think that's probably more likely, but who knows, I could be wrong.
Well, speaking of someone who's definitely not an expert but who's weighed in, Donald Trump has weighed in, appearing at least to throw some support behind Putin, labelling his moves as an act of genius. What to even say to that?
Well, look, I think they were pretty stupid comments really to make, and I noticed that he tried to walk them back a bit later. He made those comments on a radio show, a right-wing radio show, whose name escapes me, and then he issued a statement later, basically saying that he was behind the US. So, look, I think he did himself a disservice with those comments, and I think it's probably hurting his popularity. I mean, if you take a broader look at Trump at the moment, you see even among Republicans a more increasingly less favourable view of him, and actually many of the major cable networks, including Fox, sometimes actually completely ignores his rallies. So the presidential election is still 2 years away here. So I think all the talk that Trump's going to run is maybe a bit premature.
Definitely premature, and my distanced observations